Okay, hi YouTube. I'm gonna make a summary here for the Diablo 3 patch notes. We got the PTR 2.77 preview. This is the final big patch that Diablo 3 is going to receive, as it seems. PTR is starting next Tuesday on December 5th, goes until December 12th, so a 1-week PTR, very short one. And there's a lot of balance changes in this patch. Also, a return of the Altar of Rites, a return of the Visions of Enmity. So those two season themes are going to be permanently in the game now. And we don't know yet what is going to be the new season theme coming in season 30. So this is probably going to be announced at a later date, and maybe also the entire rotation of season themes. Blizzard had previously stated that they're going to rotate old season themes, like the best ones, from season to season now. So this is kind of like the non-seasonal PTR, and then we're going to see what they will do as the actual season launch. Right now, I expect the season to launch either right before Christmas, maybe, although we'll see, or like early January. So they didn't give us a date here, but it might be somewhere around like end of December, early January. So like a little bit in advance of the Diablo 4 season. I already went through the Diablo 4 patch notes as well. It's kind of minor, so you can also find another video for that. But let's focus on Diablo 3 here. So first of all, what you need to know is, with the Altar of Rites coming back, they nerfed a lot of the stuff in the altar, but all of the cool stuff is staying. So all of the quality of life things are staying, CC immunity is staying, passability is staying, all of the like auto pickup, perma pools, double kill streaks, no level requirements. So this means that all of these like Season 28 special leveling strategies are staying, for example. So in case you have played Season 28, there were quite some differences here. All of that is staying. Kadala double legendaries, auto pickup and salvage. Yeah, triunes, rings, the damage reduction from the potion powers are still there, but with a tweak. But they did nerf all of the numbers, basically. So I kind of expected that already. So they don't want you to just get like, 20 tiers of power from the altar, but it's, just a few tiers basically now. And you see here, all these numbers were like reduced from like 25 to 5%, 25 to 10%, 15 to 5%, etc. So all of the damage reduction is like tuned down, all of the extra damage buffs are tuned down, but all the cool stuff is still there. Then they removed the power pylon from the potion. That is a really good move. However, really bad, they kept the empowered shrine. And I think that is something that is going to be really unhealthy for the game long term. I think that was okay for a season, but long term it's gonna be like extremely annoying to play with this, especially when it comes to like high-end pushing, because you have to go into a rift and then press potion and then get a power shrine, sorry, an empowered shrine. And if you don't, then you leave, and that is gonna be really bad. So I hope they're gonna change this. But outside of that, the shrines are still gonna be there. And double primers are going to be there. The triune rings are there, but they're nerfed. They're like 50% now, so they're weaker than Oculus rings instead of stronger than Oculus rings now. But you can still use them to your advantage when you can't spawn Oculus rings. And this is going to be the altar, basically. So overall, I'm very excited to see that coming back. But it seems like they didn't change the requirements for what you need to grind for this. So this means you have to sacrifice a chance with cash on day one, and you have to farm the stuff of herding, it seems. So they didn't actually change the requirements for any of those. At least not so far. So let's see what they will do. I kind of expected them to change the stuff of herding, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Now, we have the Visions of Enmity staying. They didn't really say that there's going to be any adjustments to that, which means that Visions of Enmity is going to be like the thing to gear up your characters. So if you have played Season 29, you know this, but if not, Visions of Enmity, there are some random portals that can appear when you go outside of rifts into adventure modes, and just in any zone, just defeat enemies. You can spawn these portals. They have like maybe a 1% chance to appear or so. So usually takes like a minute or so to find one. And you go in there and you have like tiny levels that go deeper and deeper with a bit of RNG with how far it goes and what can be in there. But there can be like levels that are full of elites, full of bosses, full of goblins, or just like regular monsters, and you get tons of loot in there. So this is how you got your gear in Season 29, and also your keys. So they kind of like effectively replace Nephilim Rifts altogether, and bounties on top of this, because at the end you also get tons of bounty mats. So bounties are only going to be there to get your recipes and some of those bounty-specific items like Ring of Royal Grandeur. So doesn't seem like they're going to nerf Visions of Enmity in any way. So we'll have to wait and see on the PTR if there was some hidden changes to this maybe. But this is completely busted when it comes to gearing up. And together with the altar, it's going to be extremely fast gearing and extremely fast power progression. Now, for the class balance changes, they basically touched every single class. So you can see this here, there's a lot of stuff. Most builds were changed in some way, up or down, but they didn't really do like any mechanical changes outside of a few exceptions. So mostly they tried to basically bring the builds a bit closer together by changing how big the set multipliers are or some specific item multipliers. And overall, yeah, some of the topics got nerfed, like Meteor, Nova, those definitely went down. And some of the bottom builds kind of went up here a little bit. So it's kind of like everything is kind of like situated somewhere in like the A and B tier for the most part, from like the current perspective. But there are some builds that will probably still be like quite a bit better than others, and some that are still going to be quite a bit weaker than others. So there's still work to do, I think. I hope that they're going to like take another look at this, because some of it seems a bit out of sync, I guess, with what it should be. But let's jump into it. So Barbs got actually the fewest changes. They had 2 here. Might of the Earth got like around a 4 tier buff or so. So that is kind of cool. So Leapquake and also Seismic Slam, for example, they're going to be like okay-ish builds now on the Barb. Especially for like, you know, GR90 speed farming or GR100 speed farming, something like Leapquake or Seismic Slam. It's kind of cool. So that's nice. Not a top tier push build, I guess, but okay. Hoda was unchanged, for example. So Hoda's going to be relatively powerful still. And Raker got a pretty heavy nerf here. So it went from 5,500 per stack to 2,500. That's like a nerf of roughly 5 GRs. So right now, Raker was a really powerful build. It was like one of the strongest in the game, actually. It's like up here. And that will basically go down a little bit. But for example, if Empowered Shrines stay in the game, then Raker will still remain one of the most powerful pushing builds, I believe, because this is like one of the builds, probably the build almost, that benefits the most from Empowered Shrines. There are some others as well that benefit a lot from Empowered Shrines for pushing, but this is definitely one of them. Then you have Crusaders. There's a lot of changes here. Roland's gets like a 5 tier buff, so it's not really anything crazy, but Roland's is just going to be better. I was hoping they would maybe give it like more single target viability with the denial shield or so, but okay. Aegis of Valor goes down around 2 tiers or so, so a small nerf. Kind of weird. It wasn't really like such a top tier build here, but okay. But you see like Roland started out very low. I think I could have actually taken like a bigger bump up. Here's Blessed Shield. They made it so that this was already there, and now this extra damage bonus for the first enemy hit gets reduced by 50% for subsequent hits. So Blessed Shield has like bigger AoE damage capabilities. I'm not exactly sure how's the single target on Blessed Shield right now. So that was improved massively in another patch lately. I have not played it since. And now you get like better AoE again. Blessed Shield is going to be somewhat okay. It's like here. It might move up to somewhere like current A tier, for example, with that. But not really too crazy. But what is pretty insane is this one. Blade of Prophecy gets a massive buff. So previously only 2 condemned enemies were triggering extra condemn explosions, and now every condemned enemy triggers extra condemn explosions. This is completely busted, I think, in the AoE fights, and it's gonna make condemn by far the best Crusader build. It's already the best anyway, and now it gets a massive buff, and it's gonna absolutely melt the servers. So that was already a problem with this build. It's like the laggiest build in the game currently, I think, in terms of like solo pushing, and you have to be extremely careful with your AoE fights. And now you're gonna get this. So I'm not sure if that's such a good move, but we'll see how it will play out. Then we have Faithful Memory. This is like a really nice buff here for hammers. It doesn't really like change the power level of the build all that much, besides making the boss fights much more consistent and much faster. So previously this build had the issue that you needed large pulls to deal any kind of damage, and then on a boss fight it did nothing. And now you can actually stack this buff. So this is like the new line here. So you can kind of like stack it up to 10, even on the boss, and you will have your maximum damage output. But in general, Blessed Hammer is like really far down, and this is not really going to help it enough to get anywhere. Then you have Demon Hunters. Imperial gets a pretty nice buff. Imperial is like a really like fan favorite build, I think, so that's kind of cool. So previously that was like pretty far down, and now it gets like a 3 tier bump or so. So it's gonna go up here together with like some of the other like especially good speed farming builds on the Demon Hunter. So we have the God, we have UE. So Shadow is gonna be somewhere in that level as well, and it's gonna be also like relatively solid with Guardian Killer. Probably not on the level of Rathma or Spiders, but usable probably. So that's gonna be interesting to see. And then interestingly, Marauders got a pretty heavy nerf, around 4 GRs. That kind of surprised me because Marauders was already not that crazy. It was kind of like up here. And Natalia was already significantly ahead of Marauders, and that didn't get a change at all. So that is a bit weird in my opinion. Maybe we're gonna see more adjustments here. I think this just is kind of like unnecessary, to be honest, because of, you know, some of the other builds up here are coming down, and I think Marauder was not really like a crazy exception, but okay. Then we have Monks. Raymond got a massive buff. Raymond is going to be somewhat solid, actually. I think Raymond was already not performing that badly. It was down here. It goes up like 5-6 GRs or so. It's going to be somewhere here. So that's pretty good. That it doesn't have any damage reduction whatsoever. They didn't like add anything there. That was kind of like one of the main downsides of the build. That's a bit sad to see. Uliana is also a sad story. They buffed it a little bit by like 2 GRs or so. Uliana is currently also like somewhere down here, I believe. So that's not really enough. And also, I really dislike that they didn't remove Shenlong from the build. I think a buff to, for example, Lion's Claw or Fist of Az might have been a better choice here, just to like actually make you use those weapons instead of Shenlongs, because I think that just is more fun to play Ulianas without Shenlongs. So I hope that they're gonna reconsider this here. Kiroshiro's Blade got a slight buff. Not really, but you need to hit 5 of your enemies instead of 3 or fewer for the extra damage buff. So you get 150% damage bonus, and then when you hit only a few enemies, you get a 250% bonus, but otherwise the build is unchanged. So it doesn't really like increase the power of Wave of Light or something by any noticeable amount, I guess. But there might be some scenarios, for example, when you have a boss fight and you click a power pylon and you spawn exactly 3 targets, for example, you can actually profit from that higher multiplier in those cases, but it's kind of like a really rare scenario. Then we have Necromancer. A lot of stuff changed here. Pestilence got a massive buff in 2 ways. So first of all, the set goes up by like 4 GRs, and also Corpse Whisper Pauldrons goes up by another like 5 or 6 GRs or so. So in general, like Corpse Lance is going to be like a roughly 10 GR stronger or so, playing this with Pestilence. So Auto Lancer is definitely on the menu for like low GR speed farming for T16 and all that stuff. It's going to feel real good, I think. It's not really going to be like a crazy push build or anything. Necromancer Pestilence starts out as literally the worst set in the game. I mean, there are worse builds here for solo pushing, but they have better builds on the set. So that's literally the worst one. And that goes up quite a bit. Not really good enough to make it like really like high tier viable or so for like the top builds or top clears. But it's something, and especially for a farming build, I think it's going to feel much better. I was also hoping for a bit of a mechanical reworker, to be honest. Like, you know, some easier corpse generation, some easier like auto lancing or something like that, because I think the build is still too clunky for like long-term play, in my opinion, but okay. Inarius gets a really chunky upgrade here, roughly plus 4 GRs, and Tragul's gets a nerf of roughly 2 GRs. So previously, if you look at the tier list here, we had Tragul, then LOD, and then Inarius Nova as the top 3 builds in the game, pretty much, alongside the Tarasha and the Raker. And, well, Tragul goes quite a bit down, and Inarius goes quite a bit up. So I think, actually, Inarius Nova is going to be Tragul Nova, but we have to see exactly. But 6-tier difference now between the two, compared to before, I think will make Inarius win. With Inarius being like kind of like the squishier version of Nova, and Tragul being the tankier version of Nova, but a bit weaker, I think. So that is kind of interesting. But they also nerfed Nova here with the Blood type Blade. So it went from maximum 25 targets to maximum 10 targets. It's kind of expected, I guess. However, it does have the upside that it makes the damage much more consistent. So it's like much easier to actually like finish off smaller pulls and finish off the boss. So solo pushing is going to feel a lot better on Nova because of this change. Because now you don't have this insane gap between single target and AoE damage now. So it's going to be quite good. And LOD is like basically untouched besides this build here, this change here. So we'll see if like Inarius is the best Nova build, and then LOD, and then Tragul, or if it's Inarius, Tragul, LOD. So it's gonna be kind of close, I think. Then we have Bone Spear. There's a slight nerf here. This is like roughly 2 tiers. A bit unexpected, to be honest. I mean, we had it up here, but it wasn't really crazy. But okay, it's like a small nerf. They also gave a small nerf to Grasp of Essence, so the Cold Explosion gloves go down a little bit. You get only 4 stacks now instead of 5 stacks. That's like also like 1 or 2 tiers nerf. So LD Cold Explosion is going to go down a little bit. And then in general, I guess most of the Necro builds are going to be all ending up somewhere here in A, actually. outside of like Pestilence and yeah, some of these weird things here with like, yeah, off meta, like Inarius CE, Poison Scythe. There's actually a good chance that we're gonna like unpublish some of these like existing really low tier builds, like, you know, the second and the best and the third best versions of like a weird set or something like that. You also have still stuff like Tarasha Frozen Orb, for example, and IK Charge. You know, there's like just way better builds on these sets that are probably going to be like the long-term play now. So let's see. But yeah, this is kind of the necro changes here. Overall, I kind of agree with this the most out of all the class changes. I think generally these are good changes and kind of make the game more healthy, in my opinion. One thing that was not changed is Rathma. Rathma as a solo pushing build is not that crazy, but as a boss killer, it's insane and will probably be like the boss killer for eternity, basically, in this game now. There is also still LOD spiders, but usually that has not really been played. And Rathma just kind of does this job better and potentially brings some group utility. So I think this is gonna be the way now. Then we have Witch Doctor, a juicy buff to Raymond, the Jade Harvester. It does 26,000 seconds of dots worth of damage now. So that's like 1/3 of a day, roughly, instead of only 10,000 seconds. I mean, realistically, it is like a GR buff of like 6 tiers or so, or 7, which is not really enough to make it like any kind of good. It starts out really low here, but it's gonna go, I don't know, somewhere up there basically. And it's gonna be somewhat playable, but yeah, nothing crazy. Helltooth, on the other hand, gets a really chunky buff, goes to 37.5k damage instead of 17.5. That's like also 5-6 GRs or so. I think Helltooth is gonna be really cool and fun to play now. So there's Helltooth Gargs. That's gonna go up quite a bit if you're a Garg enjoyer, but more importantly, I think Zombie Bears. Zombie Bears is gonna be a pretty solid, like kind of A-tier build now. It's gonna be a nice farming build. I'm personally a big Zombie Bears enjoyer, so I'm very happy to see this. And this is probably the best change on the Witch Doctor in my opinion. Mundunugu gets a small nerf, like 2 tiers. Kind of unnecessary in my opinion, but okay. Eric here gets a huge nerf though, around 5 GRs. So this means that the newly buffed chicken from season 29 is going to go down again. It was really powerful, to be fair. It wasn't like that crazy in like the cross-class comparison, but on the Witch Doctor it was clearly dominant, and that goes down quite a bit. And also Arachir Spiders is kind of like dead now, I guess. Like even as a boss killer, you're not going to play Arachir anymore. You're going to play LOD Spiders if you want to do that. So Arachir Spiders, yeah, it's kind of like over, I guess. So if you want to play Spiders, it's going to be LOD, I think. And Sunimasa gets like a tiny nerf here. Kind of unnecessary nerf, similar to the Mundunugu. I think both of these could have been left unchanged, but okay. And finally, here's the Wizard. We have DMO. So DMO gets a chunky buff of roughly like 3-4 GRs. It's not really enough, I think, but it definitely brings the Wizard builds a bit closer together. So when you go on the Wizard here, we have DMO Twister here, we have DMO Frozen Orb, and both these basically move up like roughly 1 tier or so each on this tier list. Then we have Tarasha that gets a heavy nerf, basically halved in damage. So this means Tarasha Meteor goes way down. That was kind of expected, I guess. It has been really dominant. Even with the Paragon cap in season 29, people have been clearing like GR 150 solo in like, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes or something like that at this point. So it's pretty crazy. And that nerf was definitely in order. So Meteor is not going to be the thing anymore, I guess. It's still going to remain somewhat powerful, but there is a second nerf that goes with Meteor. So this is like roughly 5 tiers. And then there's a Smoldering Core that only stacks to 3 instead of 10. So that is a heavy nerf as well, again. Basically halving or so the damage again. So this is like roughly 5 tier nerf, and then another rough 5 tier nerf or so. So Meteor is going to go way down. However, I talked about the Empowered Shrines earlier. And this is one of those builds that also immensely profits from Empowered Shrines when you fish for like high GRs with a good density, and then you can play Arcane Meteor with Empowered Shrines, and you're gonna get quite a bit of that power back. So we'll see how exactly that will play out, if they keep the Empowered Shrines in the game or not. And also, potentially the Smoldering Core might be so weak now that it could actually replace it with a one-hand and offhand. This has already been done for 4-man play, for example, in the past, for like the Bazooka combo with Archon and stuff like that. I think LOD Meteor, for example, you don't suffer from this nerf, for example, so you can definitely play LOD, Arcane Meteors, just not run Smoldering Core, but you have like an Archon playstyle with an offhand. And that could potentially still be one of the best wizard builds, or maybe the best wizard build, so the Meteor Bazooka there. So we'll see exactly. And there's potentially other options here on Firebird Meteor as well, so we'll see. But yeah, kind of like a missed opportunity here, I think, with like changing Meteor a bit more. So for example, I think Firebird Meteor is gonna remain like the Meteor, or like the Firebird build over like Firebird Explosive Blast and Firebird Flame Blades. We'll see if that nerf is enough. And in general, okay, Tarasha is going to remain a Meteor build. Tarasha Frozen Orb, for example, is probably never coming back really. And we'll see exactly how strong this will be with all of the new changes. And finally, here's a Twisting Sword. Twisting Sword got a tiny nerf. Well, it's like also 1 or 2 GRs or so. They just reduced the maximum stack size to 3 instead of 5 for this damage buff. The functionality remains unchanged, so you can still stack 5 Twisters into each other. But yeah, that seems kind of weird. I think the Twister nerf was not really needed. However, it does bring the DMO builds a bit closer together. So DMO Twister and DMO Frozen Orb, they're going to be like very even now, so that's kind of good. And with this moving up, and then Twister also moving up here, this DMO Twister, that should be fine. But yeah, there's no Veer changes, which is a bit sad. No Firebird changes. But yeah, I think in general, like a lot of the wizard stuff is going to be like much closer together now. So overall, a pretty good move, I think. But yeah, that also is actually everything that was in the patch notes. So I talked about some of the things that I think are missing, some of those missed opportunities. I hope that Blizzard is going to go back and maybe do some adjustments, especially for those like outliers here, like Condemn in particular, I think is going to be a problem. And some of those weaker builds just weren't buffed enough. So there's still a lot of stuff down here that I think that they could really go and do some things. Like Sunwoku hasn't been touched. Raymond has like no damage reduction. You know, a bunch of these builds here have not really been touched or buffed enough. So there's definitely a lot more potential for like some extra tweaks. But overall, I think it's moving in the right direction with like everything kind of coming closer together. And I think we're also gonna have to like reevaluate this tier list here in particular. With, for example, making like more granular jumps instead of 5 GRs, maybe gonna do like a smaller jump every single tier or so, just so that we can spread out the builds a little bit more. Because it seems like everything kind of like moved into this A and B tier range for the most part. But yeah, this is it for the PTR preview. I'm gonna be playing it. I'm not sure exactly on the first day because Avatar of Zir comes out in D4, but I'll definitely jump in on the PTR during the next week at some point, and we're gonna check it out, and we're gonna see if there's other adjustments coming. We're gonna check out the new avatar. Maybe there are some changes to the unblock requirements, for example. Maybe there are some other hidden changes. Maybe there's some things that weren't in the patch notes. So we'll see, and then keep you guys updated. Hope you enjoyed this little summary here. Stay tuned for the maximum updates, of course, for season 30. We're gonna be going back and updating all those guys again, and then we're gonna have a nice little season when it comes out. Hope you like this video, and see you guys in the next one.